Hello, and welcome to today's VC Task Force Gary's Picks event for investors and startups. My name is Joel Rosenberg, Director of Business Development and Strategy for VC Task Force. VC Task Force is an organization where the venture community comes together to address critical issues, provide workshops and events for the benefit of the venture and entrepreneurial communities. VC Task Force provides access to an extensive ecosystem of VCs, corporate VCs, and angel investors. You may ask questions anytime during today's event, and time permitting, they will be answered live after today's interview. It is my pleasure to welcome Gary's Picks host, Gary Fowler. Gary is CEO and co-founder of GSD Venture Studios, an award-winning growth stage AI venture studio. Gary is also co-founder of the award-winning AI startup Eva.ai, as well as the investment firm DY Investments. Today, Gary will be interviewing special guest Leo Ramirez, co-founder and CEO of Encast. Encast, derived from the French word encastres, meaning to embed, seamlessly integrates into HR, financial services, and retail platforms, enhancing product offerings with social impact opportunities. Encast elevates brand affinity and drives meaningful social impact, creating a win-win for people, influencers, businesses, and society. Leo has led Encast since co-founding the company in 2014. Through philanthropic activities in the workplace, Leo and his team provide values-based analytics that help businesses develop more aligned employee and customer-centric programs, which in turn boost culture, brand retention, and profitability. With over 29 years of experience in launching and managing social ventures, Leo is a passionate and visionary leader who leverages his expertise in consulting, mentoring, and analytical skills to create positive social impact, inclusion, and community engagement. Take it away, Gary.
That's great. Thanks, Joel. Good having you here, Leo, and thanks, June. As Joel said, I'm a serial entrepreneur and investor. Love startups and love what Leo's doing. I mean, he's got an incredible background all the way from Stanford and the computer science program. So, Leo, you've had a lot of experience building companies. How did you go down through and decide to take the slant working with like kids and adults that are grief-stricken? How did you go from computer science to, being so empathetic and caring about groups?
I think I have my and by the way, thank you for having me on today, VC Task Force and Gary. It all comes down to my roots. I was raised in South Texas in a mobile home. My dad is a teacher. He taught for 32 years at the high school level and was very successful. I mean, he was a Texas Teacher of the Year back in 1993, and has one of the winningest records in competitive mathematics in Texas history. My mom sacrificed her career to raise three kids. I'm the oldest of three, and support my dad in his passion for helping others. And we were taught at a very early age that, despite us not having much, I didn't have the same toys. We didn't go on trips. We didn't go out to eat. But we had 3 square meals a day and education and love and safety, in our home. But so many people that we saw on the streets in Mexico when we'd visit every, other week or so to see relatives just did not have that. And we were always told, look, despite how bad you think you have it, others have it worse. And it's our responsibility to help. So that's where it started for me. And then I went to Stanford, undergrad. I got to work my dream job at Apple, where we intersected. Gary, we didn't know each other, but we were there around the same time. And I really started to come out of my shell, right? I love technology. I have since I was a little kid, but it took my grandfather passing away many, many years later, back in 2003. I left Stanford in 96. When he passed away, it kind of shocked me back into, what am I doing here in this world, right? I have these amazing skills and this, through my computer science background and engineering prowess. but how can I apply those skills in a way that can better the planet? And I remember the lessons of growing up in a mobile home and being taught to help others. And that's when I started to mold the two together. It's when serendipitously a friend of mine asked me to co-found a nonprofit with him. It was an accelerator for economically distressed regions. And in that experience, I learned a lot about the philanthropic world and saw a lot of the issues that existed within that space. And I thought, aha, this is where I'm meant to be. Like all my life has been leading me to this. And that's when I started to weave together my technology expertise along with my burgeoning nonprofit expertise, which I've now, really grown substantially, and continue to find new and innovative ways to improve the world through those passions.
And so when you went down through this, you went to Apple in 94, 96, Trilogy, Sun Microsystems. I forget what years you were there, but you were there at Sun. Were you still working on the whole philanthropic part then when you were going down working with those companies, or when did it start to really kick off? You said, I'm going to do this. I've been thinking about it. I want to really focus on it.
It started for me at Sun. When I was at Trilogy, that was my first job out of school, and they were paying more money than I knew what to do with. I had ridiculous amounts of responsibilities. I mean, back in I started there in 96. By 99 and 97 and 98, I was helping to close, a couple $1 million deals. I was doing software development work for a product that was generating tens of millions of dollars for the company. And I was just 22, 23 years old. Like I was a young whippersnapper. I just come out of my shell. I realized all the cool things I could do. I had all this money, but it left me empty. Right? I didn't feel like I was really fulfilling my life's purpose in any way. And it was while I was at Sun that my grandfather passed away. And it was then that 2 years later that I co-founded this accelerator. I started to learn a lot about the philanthropic world. And I just so happened to be at a place at Sun and then eventually acquired by Oracle that was so big. And I've been working in the startup world for so long that I was incredibly good at my job, where I had the ability to do my passion work pretty significantly outside of the workplace. And so I was getting paid, through my full-time gig, and I was able to do all this other stuff, nonprofit work and technology work and exploring my full potential when I was at Sun Microsystems and in Oracle. Eventually,
And you
when I
were
left
there a long
Oracle,
time. You were there, from between Sun and Oracle, you were there 10 years, right?
yeah, 1 month shy of 10 years.
Now, what
Exactly.
was the culture like comparing Sun to Oracle?
I love the Sun culture a lot. In many ways, it still felt like a startup. And I think part of it was because Sun acquired a company that hired me to come work for them. So we were in our own little bubble. We were like the redheaded stepchild. We were still doing things in our nonprofit way, sorry, in our startup way. And Sun was trying to push upon, us, the Sun way. But in time, they started to see how much more efficient we were, right, in working in a more agile fashion. And they started adopting a lot of the things that we were doing at the corporate level. And had we had the time and had Sun been more successful, I think that some of those learnings from the startup could have really helped Sun Microsystems. But I think it was just a little too late. When I was there, every summer we had a reduction in force, or RIF, and so really we only had about 6 productive months every year, right? We
Really?
had
So they
the
had
three
to,
the
they started laying it because what happens? They started getting rid of Spark stations, or what? What was the main reason?
it's like Sun was always trying to find the right kind of mix of how its business units are oriented, how they work with each other. And every year they tried this experiment and it failed, and they tried something new. So for a few months after the RIF, people are readjusting to their new roles. And for a few months before the RIF, people are worried about, what's going to happen this year. And that's why I said, between 6 to 9 months a year is really the only effective time we had, of work at Sun. So no wonder we eventually, were worth nothing, and Oracle could come in and sweep us up at a bargain. Oracle was just this massive, massive, company, and it just swallowed us whole, and I don't know, it completely changed. Like, I wasn't the biggest fan of the Oracle culture. I just realized for me, it just wasn't the place to be. I needed a place with a lot more flexibility. It was a lot more agile. It was easier to get, to executives and other people that I wanted to talk to and learn from at Sun, and it wasn't that way at Oracle. So eventually, it just became the wrong place for me to thrive.
Wow, that's interesting. And did you get to meet Larry Ellison?
I never did. I'd still like to. In fact, I want to get him more kind of philanthropically engaged. He, when I was there, at least from what I was privy to, didn't seem like he was very involved. When Oracle had, again, when I was there, a really not a very good matching program, where I think at the time it was like, if you donate $100, they'll match you $100, and that's it. Like, nowadays, companies like Dell and Apple will match you up to $10,000 a year, to
Oh, that's
contributions you make
great. That's really good.
to any organization. And that kind of culture starts at the top, right? So if Ellison and other leadership made a commitment to give back more, then their influence can have a profound influence on the impact that their employees and contractors make. And that leads us to where I am today with Encast and the work that we're doing. It's like taking the influence that companies, the influence that people, have over their customers, over their fans, and leveraging that for massive social good. And so a conversation like that with Larry Ellison I think could be really exciting.
Yeah, so at the same time you're doing all this, you're board of advisor for Dance International. You're at the Mexa Art Museum, doing the VP of memberships. I mean, what made you decide to do that? What was that all about? Was that because of your own heritage, or you just said, "Oh, I think this would be really fun"?
To be honest, the first board that I was on, which is a Mexicante Museum in downtown Austin, there I don't know if this is still true, but when I was on the board, they were the only museum in the nation that had carte blanche access to Mexican art from their museums. So we could borrow art, from Mexican museums, showcase it, at our museum in Austin, and then send it back when we were done. But they had a board member who knew me, and they liked me, and they said Leo would make a fantastic board member. I never even thought about membership. I didn't feel that I had the skills to do that kind of service work. But they invited me, and I liked the mission of the organization. I'd visited many times before. I joined the board, and I was crappy at it. I was absolutely, positively crappy at it. And then a year later, another company, Mexican or nonprofit, Mexican Alliance, would invite me to be on their board, so I joined. And then Dance International asked me, to be an advisor, so I kind of helped them around. So those are the first three nonprofits that I served, and did not do the greatest job. Again, I did not know what I was doing. I wish I would have had someone guiding me along the way. And it also came at a time when I was putting in a lot of work into this first nonprofit, which was called Edco Ventures, and then my second nonprofit, which is called Mini Donations. And I was doing work with Oracle and some microsystems. I was just too busy, and I had to start saying no. And so I ended up being on no boards for many years. Flash forward to today, I sit on about 8 boards, and they kind of span the gamut from entrepreneurship to health, mental health, and a couple of other initiatives, education, that I really care about, and homelessness. as well. One of the big ones that I'm helping with is called Finding Home ATX. We're looking to end unsheltered homelessness in Austin through a
Yeah,
$500
there's a
million
lot of it.
initiative.
Geez, I was down there this summer and I was surprised compared to what I had seen before. The amount of homelessness down there was unbelievable, actually. And why
Yeah,
is that?
it's
What's
pretty
what's
bad.
happening, Leo? Why there's so many homeless down there today?
It's there are many factors that play into it. A lot of people believe that because Austin is the liberal, community, and we have a lot of liberal policies, that we're attracting people from outside the community who are homeless to come to Austin and continue to be homeless. The reality is that over 90%, and this has been true for over a decade, if not longer, but over 90% of the people that are unhoused in Austin today started here, right? So very few people are coming from elsewhere. Two, affordability is a major, major issue, right? So as successful as Austin has been at creating Silicon Hills, which is what we call ourselves, and having our downtown blossom with all these skyscrapers and having a lot of very wealthy people come in from California and New York and other places around the nation, they've driven up housing prices and have pushed out people from their homes and have made it more difficult for people to own and even rent homes. So affordability has been correlated in many other communities as a primary driver to homelessness as well. So that's something that we absolutely have a problem with in Austin, and that's contributed to our homelessness issue.
What happens with those people? It's 15 degrees out, right? What happens when it's 15 degrees out? What do they do?
We have a number of warming shelters. A lot of local churches, will take them in, and we have a couple of apartments that we've been converting into individual units of housing. This initiative, Finding Home ATX, is focused on a housing first approach. So the idea here is that Maslow's hierarchy of needs states that unless you have a strong foundation of safety and security, food, water, then you can't flourish as an individual. And that's what we're focusing. So giving people shelter and cohabitating with other people who are also experiencing that trauma of being, experiencing homelessness is not a way to get people out of homelessness. So what we want to do is create individual units of housing and ultimately help, give them the supportive services they need to exit homelessness permanently. And so during times like this, when the weather is really cold, or in the summer when things are really hot, we have cooling shelters. That's an opportunity for us to kind of check in with our unhoused neighbors who we know. Like, where have you been? What services have you received? Let's get an update on your life and let's see if we can help you and place you somewhere else where you can flourish more, or even discover people that we've not known before. So it's just one of the intakes into our system so that we know who people are. Austin happens to be one of the best communities in the nation in terms of our homelessness tracking. We can literally name almost every individual in our community who is unhoused because our nonprofit partners in our community do such a good job of keeping track of folks.
Have you seen any success stories? Anybody going from homelessness back into the mainstream?
Yeah, there have been a number of them that have been documented through our nonprofit partners. And we're really proud of the work we're doing here. And the whole intent of Finding Home ATX is to essentially open source what we've done to raise money, to build partnerships, to engage nonprofits. One of the things you'll find, and this is true across any cause anywhere in the world, is any community has a certain set of organizations that are doing work for the arts, for our unhoused neighbors, for children, for healthcare, cancer research. So there's like little pockets of organizations that are all doing similar work, and they're all competing for the same resources, same money, same people, same goods. And when you look at a macro level, in the United States, about 90% of all resources, money, goods, time, are being given to 10% of all nonprofits. And there's about 1.8 million organizations, 1.5 million are 501c3s, the other 300,000 are fiscally sponsored or so, about 1.8 million organizations. And only about 200,000 of those organizations get to play with about $450 billion a year. The other 1.7 million organizations get to play with about $50 billion a year. So there's a scarcity mindset when it comes to nonprofits. And when you're in a community like Austin with 40 organizations working to address homelessness in different ways, and they tend not to work together. And again, it's not just homelessness, it's every cause, it's every community. So what we're trying to do with this particular cause, and is perfectly aligned with the work that we're trying to do with Encast as well, but in this particular cause, we're telling all these organizations, if you work together, we can lift the entire community of Roundhouse neighbors up out of homelessness by giving them the resources, the shelter they need, the mental health services, job placement services that they need to exit homelessness. This is how you solve homelessness. The way you solve affordability, right, is through 5, 10 different approaches, right? And there's a bunch of organizations doing the work. Let's all come together and let's make sure that people get assigned to the resources that they need to afford, their homes. And so we want to demonstrate that by creating this collaborative, that we can actually solve issues, because working as individuals, these organizations have not been able to make a big dent. And one of the things that we want to eventually, showcase with our technology, with Encast, when we become big enough, is this ability to kind of look throughout a cause category in a community and look to see who are the organizations that are providing the greatest impact. And we can essentially create portfolios of these organizations where people can say, I could give to organization XYZ individually, or I can give to a portfolio that's been created of organizations that are working in this one space. And there are experts that are managing the portfolio to ensure that every contribution I make at any moment in time is optimized to make the greatest impact at any moment in time. And so that's technology that Encast invented a couple of years ago during the pandemic, which is now patent pending. It's just a new way of giving, which we think can open up new possibilities for discovering high impact organizations, and then change this dynamic where, like I said earlier, 90% of the money is going to 10% of organizations. Imagine that 90% of funds being redistributed to organizations that are actually making a bigger impact on the world, and not just spending their revenues on marketing and fundraising.
No, I think it's, that's it. It's like, I think you've hit the holy grail in this thing. Is you got to go out there. One is combine the power of everybody to be able to solve the problem. But how much, I had heard that a lot of times that the money that's spent on some of these nonprofits doesn't actually get to the people that need the money. It's more for infrastructure. It's like a huge number, right? Like 70 or 80%. Is that true?
Yeah, it depends on the organization. I will never generalize and say that all big organizations are not spending their money toward mission and making an impact. In the nonprofit world, we talk about outcomes, right? So if you're a nonprofit and you have to report back to your grant makers, what you did with their money, then this is a report on outcomes that you're giving them, so that they know, okay, I gave you $1 million, and with $1 million you helped this many kids, you bought these many supplies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Most donors don't give in that way. Most donors give by what's top of mind, right? So who partnered with the NFL, the NBA, who partnered with some of the biggest and brightest corporations in your company, and that's where people tend to give, because it's really all they know. And most people just won't be sophisticated enough to ask the question like you just did. How much of resources given to this nonprofit are actually going to make a difference, right? In helping these outcomes that they say they're making. Most people will just say, "Oh, I heard of." I'm not going to mention organizations, going to piss someone off, but I've heard of such and such an organization. They do work in cancer research. They do work in community building. They do work in affordability. I'm just going to give to them blindly. And that is not really helping because there are many smaller, more nimble organizations that could be doing better work. Now, there are some large organizations that are doing amazing work, that are very efficiently not only spending the money they have, but they've built up reserves through their endowments, which allow them to operate even more efficiently. And those most certainly need to be lifted up and put on a pedestal as examples of how to be a large organization and make a huge difference at the same time.
Mhm.
And so what we're doing now, we've pivoted as a direct result of working through the GSD, is become an influencer philanthropy platform. Because so many people are overwhelmed by choice, right? There's 1.8 million organizations in the United States. There's about 8 million NGOs around the world. How do you choose? How do you know which few organizations with your limited resources you should support that will make a difference? And what we're saying is, well, look to your favorite influencer, whether it be a professional athlete or an actor or actress or a talk show host or a college athlete. Now that they're with NIL being so prominent, even a corporation can be an influencer, right? So you have a reputation as an influencer in whatever your craft is, whether it's business or whether it's sports or whether it's acting. But you also have a reputation as you as a person having certain passions, having certain interests. And those draw people into your world as well, your fans, right? Navigate to you because of how good you are at your craft and also what you stand for. And this is even more important in this day and age with millennials and Gen Zers, who are over 60% of the workforce, and they're looking for purpose in the world, right? They want to connect with each other, they want to have experiences, but they also want to connect with brands and people and organizations that align with their values and interests. And this is what we're out to discover with our technology. We're out to partner with these influencers so that they can help guide the resources that their fans have to give to very likely these smaller, more nimble organizations. And yes, there'll be some of these really big ones there too. But until we have a system in place that allows us to leverage kind of the tracking of contributions and the impact that they're making, this is a way of leveraging trust and the influences that people have over fans to more efficiently direct charitable contributions and volunteerism into the world.
Now we're coming up to the top of the show, so closing remarks and how do people get a hold of you?
You can get hold of me through LinkedIn. I am Leo Ramirez, LeoRamirez on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out, that way. Our website is www.encast.gives, Gives. And I guess the last thing is I just want more people to get involved in whatever moves and inspires them, right? If you can find people who share your passions, one of the beautiful things that comes out of that is that you end up interacting with people that are not like you in some important way. It could be politically, it could be religiously, it could be culturally, right? But you've got the common ground of homelessness or children's education or mental health, right, that you are rallying around. And it's in that interaction as a donor, as a volunteer, with these other people that I hope can start to heal our society and make us less divisive. And that's one of the main things that I would love to leverage philanthropy as a way of bringing people together more. And it feels good.
No, that's great. Well, thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us today. And thanks for everybody here to join us at
Thank you, Joel.
We
Yeah,
appreciate the time.
absolutely.
Thank you, June. Thank you, VC Task Force, an incredible group doing incredible things in Silicon Valley. Joel, any closing words?
Yeah, Leo, thank you so much. That I mean, your topic is really inspirational, and especially given this is an election year, bringing people together, addressing the divisivity, finding, areas where people can work together as opposed to areas that unite people as opposed to divide them. It's fantastic, and I really applaud you for that. Yeah. So, Gary, thank you again for another excellent interview. To our audience, thanks for attending, and everybody stay well. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks, on the 31st of January, for the next edition of Gary's Picks.
Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.